Welcome to the Stoic Responder Podcast. I'm your host, Christopher Healy. As a special agent who spent more than 15 years conducting large-scale fraud, money laundering, and public corruption investigations, Stoic philosophy provided a mindset edge that became the foundation of my professional success. My mission today is to share those same ancient mindset lessons with you so that you can turn obstacles into opportunities and adversity into advantage. Time to muster up. Welcome back to the Stoic Responder Podcast. This is episode 94. You can always change yourself. All right, folks, it is November 5th. That means it is Tuesday. And in the United States, that means it is election day. And you don't tune in for me to talk about politics or political things. On occasion, when I talk about law enforcement or when I talk about pressing issues within law enforcement, sometimes those touch on the political. But I am not a political podcast by design. I want people from all walks of life who tune into this to get to feel comfortable here, to feel like I'm speaking from a place that's neutral, that's based in the philosophy of Stoicism. That said, I have had a lot of people reach out to me about my thoughts on the election, in large part because I worked for the government and because this is a national federal election. I've had people checking in and saying, hey, what do you think? And I'll make it very quick and easy. I am generally speaking, a small government guy. Now, I don't think that I fit in well into the rubric of either political party, either major political party in the United States, simply because neither of them are small government parties. They both tend to grow government. It doesn't really matter who's in charge of the government. The federal government grows. It just grows at a slightly lower rate, or maybe the growth is directed into different areas with one party in charge or another. And, so there's really, I'm kind of politically homeless, I guess I would say. I don't fit neatly into either political party. So if you want Stoic advice on the election, what I would say to you is this. If you're still undecided, I'm not sure that there are many of you out there that are still undecided, but if you are among those handful of people in those handful of states where being undecided truly matters today, I'd ask you to look at the issues in front of you. I would ask you to say, what can the candidates truly do at the federal level? Because what I see a lot in the advertisements, at least here in Texas, that are on the television, is I see, for instance, the two candidates for Senate in Texas fighting back and forth about issues that a United States senator really has nothing to do with. There's a lot of discussion about Texas's state laws regarding abortion. A United States senator has nothing to do with that. What their opinion of state laws are is really irrelevant to their job in the United States Senate. So I would ask you to identify those issues that are most important to you, that are actually the responsibility of the people that you're going to vote for. For me, the biggest issues, as someone who lives in Texas, who has worked on the border, who has worked in border security for years and years and years, enforcing our laws on the border is incredibly important to me. It's incredibly important to me because I'm the father of young children, and I have seen the uptick in crime that has come from an unsecured border. I've seen a lot of reasons to be fearful that continuing in this way that we have for the last 3.5 years is going to have a downstream impact on our schools, on our economy, on our hospitals, on our crime rates. The county next to me, Harris County, 1 in 10, right now, 1 in 10 of the individuals who are in Harris County jail are illegal aliens. They're in the country illegally. We are the third largest county in the United States. Houston is the fourth largest city in the United States. Harris County is the third largest county in the United States. That's just down the road from me. And 10% of the criminals in that jail are in the country illegally. Now, we can't do anything about our fellow citizens committing crime. You're born into this country, we got to deal with you. But if you're not from here and you enter this country illegally and you take advantage of United States citizens, I have a real problem with that. And I was willing to move 2,600 miles from home in Maine down to the southern border almost 20 years ago to address that problem. So that's probably the one thing that I care most about and everything that comes out of that. Having been on both sides of immigration, having been a individual who arrested and deported thousands of people who were in the country illegally, having been someone who has taken down transnational criminal organizations, and having been someone who has brought 2 children into this country legally from a foreign country, has brought them in the right way, who has children who are themselves immigrants, I feel like I'm pretty well versed in that issue. And that is an issue that is directly related to the commander-in-chief. And so my vote today, actually I've already voted, but my vote, regardless of party affiliation, is for whoever is going to fix that mess or control that mess. And you can draw your own conclusions about where I came down on that. But for you, I'd ask you to do the same. Find out exactly what it is that's most important to you and ask yourself, is this something that the people who are running for office are actually in charge of? Go back to your 8th grade civics class and remind yourself what it is the executive branch and the legislative branch do at the state level and then at the federal level, and ask yourself, what issues most important to me, and vote your heart. That's what I would tell you to do. And that's the closest thing to Stoic advice on voting that you're ever going to get from me. But regardless, I hope you get out there and do your civic duty and remind yourself today that individuals around the world, including my 2 children who are immigrants to the United States from China, who came here from a place where they would never have had the right to stand up and have their voice be heard, do not get that opportunity in other places. And if you are a United States citizen who has that opportunity and doesn't take advantage of it, I would highly encourage you to do so, because it's a rare thing, not just in the world today, but in all of human history, to have the opportunity to choose your own leaders. And I would ask you to do your research and get out there and make your voice be heard. So that's as political as I'm going to get. Happy Election Day in the United States. And for my international listeners, hope you're still with me. All right, let's get into the meat of the show today. As I said, the episode is titled, You Can Always Change Yourself. Now, this is going to start out with a quote from Viktor Frankl. If you haven't read Man's Search for Meaning by Viktor Frankl, that's what we're talking about today. I highly, highly, highly recommend you pick it up and read it. Everybody should read this. And, there's a good chance, given the numbers of sales that this book has done, that you have read this. But Viktor Frankl, his story is just an incredible reminder of resilience, and I'm going to get into a little bit right now. So let me start you out with a quote. When we are no longer able to change a situation, we are challenged to change ourselves. That is a quote from Viktor Frankl. Now, Viktor was an Austrian psychiatrist, a neurologist, and also was a Holocaust survivor. And he developed this concept of logotherapy, which emphasizes the search for meaning and purpose in life. In 1942, kind of just to give you the summary of his life story, the Nazis, took Frankl, like they had taken over Austria. Obviously, Austria was allied with the Germans. It was essentially a client state of Germany during the Second World War. They had taken over Austria, and they began rounding up all the individuals in Austria who were Jewish, and Frankl was Jewish. So the Nazis sent Frankl and his family to a ghetto, one of these. It wasn't a concentration camp, but it was an area within a city that was walled off and that was essentially a concentration camp. And over the next 3 years, he was moved from that ghetto to multiple different concentration camps, I believe 4 concentration camps. And along the way, he lost his father, he lost his mother, he lost his brother, and eventually he lost his wife. They were newlyweds right before the war. So beginning in 1942, and then through the next 3 years, through the end of 1945, he goes from this one ghetto to multiple different concentration camps. And along the way, both his parents, his brother, and his wife are lost to the gas chambers, to disease, and to starvation. So imagine the horrors. Just imagine what you had to endure over that 3 or 4 years, and how easy it would be under this unimaginable loss and horror at the hands of this repressive regime to be consumed by despair, to resign yourself to the hopeless situation that's beyond your control, right? And Frankl decided to take an opposite route. He decided that he was going to use this experience, however long it took, to cultivate resilience within himself, to take responsibility for his own emotional and mental well-being, and to seek meaning in every moment that he continued to live, even while those around him that he loved and cared for more than anything on earth perished. Imagine how strong mentally you have to be to do this. We get upset again, like we're at a point right now where America is having an election. At the end of the day, you can call this, the most consequential or the most important or a threat to democracy or whatever the hell you want to. So whatever hyperbolic language either side is using, it is almost certainly not that, right? It is almost certain that 4 years from now in 2028, there's going to be another election. And there'll be another election 4 years after that, right? And you can argue that one person's policies are worse than the others, but we're not facing what Viktor Frankl was facing, right? We're not facing an authoritarian regime that is rounding up all the people of a certain ethnic background and group and putting them in concentration camps and systematically exterminating them. Like, you can be upset or depressed about, if your side loses, and then you're going to get on with your life and you're going to go back to work tomorrow. Frankl, imagine the amount of just control over his mindset he had to have to endure this unimaginable loss and horror, and to continue to resign himself to being resilient in the face of it, to taking responsibility for his own emotional and mental well-being, for recognizing that dichotomy of control that Epictetus talks about, for saying, listen, I don't control what they do to me, what they have done to my family, the situation that I have found myself in because of them that is outside of my control, but I do control my own mental, emotional, and spiritual well-being. Every single day when I wake up, I can seek something that gives me meaning. So his 1946 book, a year after the end of the war, Man's Search for Meaning, it chronicles his survival story. It has sold more than 10 million copies worldwide. And that's probably on the low end. I haven't checked the numbers recently, but last I checked, it was over 10 million. And has been translated into dozens of languages. I mean, to put that in perspective, like, I mean, that's just an incredible volume of books to be sold, right? And it continues to be sold almost 80 years later, 78 years later. It continues to be something that people pick up and find. And in it, he states that there are really just 3 ways to discover meaning, and that this is kind of how he survived his ordeal. The first that he says is by creating a work or doing a deed, right? Finding something that you can go back to, that is a core purpose for you. You find meaning by finding it could be your job. It could be something that you love doing. It could be something that you feel deeply connected to. Serving someone, showing up every single day and doing something. You find something like that, and that creates purpose in your life. Number 2, by experiencing or encountering something or someone. And he talks about love a lot, and staying alive out of love for his wife, knowing that she's almost certainly gone. They've been separated. He knows the odds are stacked against their ever seeing one another, either of them ever surviving the ordeal that they've encountered. But the very thought of that love that they shared was the encounter, the experience that kept him moving forward. And number 3, by the attitude we take toward unavoidable suffering. In other words, you get diagnosed with an illness or an injury or something that you cannot control. You do control your reaction to it. And that's what he's saying here. This suffering that he's enduring is unavoidable. So your attitude is all that you have left, right? They're going to starve you. They're going to beat you. They're going to treat you horrible. Now we see this we're going to get into this later in the week and some other stories of resilience that I think are tremendously important in addition to Frankl's. But we see that in the greatest stories of resilience in history, and there's tons of them that come out of the Second World War. We see this powerful reminder that whatever the external circumstances are, if you face it with an attitude that allows you to stay within yourself, that unavoidable suffering is less burdensome on you. Like, your suffering is less burdensome when you accept it with gratitude. One great thing that I would kind of point to this, and this is a very Stoic concept, but I'm a Boston Celtics fan. I grew up, I moved to New England in 1986. Celtics won the championship, like right when I moved to Maine. And so, it was a big part of my youth to be a Celtics fan, Larry Bird fan, obviously, McHale and Parrish and all of that stuff, DJ. And that group of Celtics was super important to me as a very young kid. And so I've continued to be a Celtics fan for 40 years. And, my love for the current Celtics team with Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown and, and all of those guys, Kristaps Porzingis, continues to be something that I truly and deeply feel connected to. And so I've been watching this documentary on Netflix called Starting Five that follows Jason Tatum throughout the 2023 2023 season, which they end up winning, 23-24 season, where ultimately they end up winning the championship. And, we haven't gotten that far into the series yet, but we've gotten to a point in the series where, it's kind of the doldrums of the season, and they go through a tough loss, and he's got to face the media afterwards. And the documentary shifts to talking to the Boston Celtics coach, Joe Mazzulla. And, they ask a question about how does, what is the burden like for Jason having to deal with the media after a loss like this, where, he takes the final shot and misses, or, they didn't play up to their standards that you hold them to. And I love the response from their coach. He immediately kind of jumps on and rejects the question and says in response, no, he doesn't have to deal with this. He has the opportunity to deal with this. He gets to deal with this. And that's what I tell him every day. You wanted this. You wanted to be great. You wanted to have to face these questions and these cameras and these opportunities to have the final shot. This isn't a burden. This is an opportunity. And that's what we're talking about when we talk about, the attitude we take towards anything, to anything from opportunity to a burden to unavoidable suffering, right? And so I think that these are three great ways to kind of framework the challenging times in our lives. So if you're one of those people who's totally bought into my side's got to win or that side's got to win or whatever, on a day like today, maybe think about it in this framework. Do something for someone, create a work or a deed that you can put yourself and your heart and mind into, because all that stuff, there's 160 million people voting, and you're one of them. You do not control the under 159,99999 who are voting, right? You control your vote. So create a work or do a deed that's going to endure beyond whatever the hell happens at the end of the election. 2, experience something or encounter someone, like find something or someone in your life that can help you rise above. Whether that's your children, whether that's your spouse, whether that's your best friend, somebody that gives you a reason to keep showing up. And number 3, the attitude is everything. The attitude you take to the suffering that you face. If you got to go in and work at a job where you hate your boss, turn that thing on its head. This is an opportunity for you to become more resilient, to show up every single day and deal with that person. It's an opportunity for you to practice patience. It's an opportunity for you to rise above the petty. It's an opportunity for you to become stronger and bear more by showing up every single day, instead of going into it that attitude of like that beaten dog of, oh my God, oh my God, oh my God. Maybe take the same, if you're one of those people who's going to live or die on the results of the election, maybe take that same attitude into, the next 4 years. If your person wins, good for you. If not, this is an opportunity for you to rise above. Maybe that deed or that thing that matters to you is volunteering for a cause that matters. That is something that that you're concerned about protecting and despite whoever is in charge, right? Maybe that opportunity to experience something or encounter someone is to tie yourself to a candidate or someone or something that you believe in, that's going to give you a opportunity to show up and do something every single day that gives you purpose. And maybe number 3, that attitude that you take towards that is to say, this is an opportunity for me to become a voice for what I believe in, right? I don't know. I'm just kind of spitballing. I haven't really written all this stuff down, but I think for any situation in your life, the advice of a man who lost everything and everyone in the course of 3 years in 4 concentration camps during the Second World War, I think we can find some pearls of wisdom in that. No matter what we are dealing with on a daily basis, I don't think there's any way to hold a candle to what Viktor Frankl overcame. It's just such a powerful reminder that whatever the external circumstances you are facing that are causing you distress, whether it's on duty or off duty, you always have control over internal factors such as your attitude, your perspective, your reactions, and your ability to find and ascribe meaning to whatever it is that you're doing. So let me leave you with a quick journal prompt and get you on your way. Ask yourself this, get out your Big Chief notebook, get out your pencil, ask yourself, how can I change my attitude, my perspective, and my inner reactions to situations outside of my control? And how can I use that to become more resilient? How can I change my attitude, my perspective, and my reactions to situations outside of my control, and then use that to become more resilient? All right, folks, 3 more episodes for you. this week. Let me get you out of here. Oh, real quick before we go. Best way to support this podcast, pick up a copy of my book, In Valor, 365 Stoic Meditations for First Responders. It's available on Amazon, Barnes & Noble, anywhere you get your books. This is a free podcast, and I don't sell a ton of books, but that book is a great resource if you want to practice this philosophy daily. It's going to give you quotes, contextualization that's directly relatable to your job. It's going to give you some daily journal prompts like the one you just got. And if you buy a copy of it, pretty much any proceeds that I get from selling that book go to support this free podcast so that we can get this out to more people. On that note, if you could do me a huge favor, like, share, and subscribe so that others can learn about what we're doing here, it would go a long way. All right, 3 more episodes for you this week. Until next time, you are out of roll.
Thank you for listening. If you enjoyed this episode, please take a moment to subscribe, like, rate, and share this podcast so that we can spread the benefits of Stoicism to other first responders. It will only take you a few moments, but it can help us tremendously. Until next time, out of roll.